Dodge this.
Good evening and welcome everyone. This is Phoenix. I hope you're doing well. It is Wednesday, May 27th, 2015. Oh yeah, here we are, middle of the week, hump day, and coming up on the end of this month, the month of May. And tonight's program, we have a special guest, Popeye. Popeye will be joining us. He's hanging on the line. He'll be coming on here in a minute from the program here on Truth Frequency Radio, Down the Rabbit Hole, and also his website, federaljack.com. And this should be an interesting show. It's kind of like interview the interviewer, you know what I mean? Like put the radio guy on the radio and see what's up. Anyway, I'm sure it'll be really nice and a lot of fun and entertaining and edifying. If you click on the first link here, it says Phoenix welcomes special guest Popeye down the rabbit hole from Truth Frequency Radio, and that is today. And Popeye, you are on board here with us, sir, right?
Yes, I am, Phoenix.
Okay, how are you? How's it going? We were talking a little bit before we went on the air here. How are things going? You're located down in the southern part of the United States?
Yes, sir. I'm down in sunny Florida.
Oh man, what's your temp there? What was it today?
It was like 93 degrees and like probably 95% humidity.
That's crazy. That's like swimming. You know, it was in the 80s here today, and I felt so hot. I'm like, oh man, it is so hot here today. But now you say you're down there in Florida, and I guess you like it. If you didn't, you would leave. But you really like Florida, right?
Yeah, I actually moved here on purpose. I wasn't born here. I moved here on purpose 10 years ago, and I actually prefer to be here. Every winter when I see 3 feet of snow, I'm from New Jersey, right outside of New York City. So when I see my friends shoveling like 3 feet of snow every winter, I snicker. I'm like, yeah, the humidity's worth it.
Oh, man, it has been brutal. As you know from the news reports, and you've been snickering a lot. You've been laughing a lot because, man, we have been hammered. I have some friends who live, we're in the northeastern part of, not northeastern, but southeastern part of Pennsylvania here. So we're not that far from New York City. I could probably be in New York City in like an hour and 10 minutes from where I'm at, or Jersey pretty quick. You know, we're at a pretty centralized location here. But I have friends that live out on Long Island. Oh my God. I mean, it just wouldn't stop this year. You know, I mean, if we would get 7 inches of snow here, they got 14 inches of snow there, and it just like wouldn't stop. So, man, you know, I guess it's a trade-off for the heat and everything. You do get used to it. I was down in Georgia for years. I was in the military down there, and so kind of got used to it. But I tell you what, man, when I first moved down, it was kind of a shock because there were no seasons. This whole, like, going out at Christmas time in your shorts, you know, and, like, sandals, it was hard to get used to in the beginning, you know. But, yeah, you know, you climatize, I guess.
Yeah, it takes a little getting used to. During the winter where I live now, I used to live down in Miami. Now I live up in the northern part of the state. So it gets a little chilly for, like, a month and a half. During the winter, it's nice. You can put on like sweatshirts for about a month and a half. But yeah, that's about my seasons. It's kind of chilly and then warm.
Yeah, kind of chilly and then warm. No, dude, that's not warm. It's hot. It's hot. 90s. Oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah, it gets a little humid here, but it's cool. Like I said, it's not so bad. I don't mind living down here. It's nice and flat. It's you get the tropical breezes, you get the tropical rainstorms that come through, and they kind of like cleanse things on a daily basis during the summer. Very predictable. You could pretty much set your watch to them.
What was some of the strange things you had to get used to when you moved down there? Because I know whenever I was down in the South, there were a couple things that I noticed. One thing, now I don't know, you can correct me if I'm way off base on this, and this was many years ago, but I noticed this. I noticed that the bad people down south will treat you better than the good people up north. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, the southern the attitude down here, even the pissed off people are very like laid back. Unless you go to like Miami, because Miami is filled with people from like New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, that tri-state area. So that attitude is very prevalent down there. But if you, where I live right now, in the northern part of the state. I live in like the north central part of the state, and like people say hi to you when you're walking down the street. They're a lot more polite than they were in the southern end of the state. I'll tell you what, though, what really blew my mind was on that road trip I took when we were out west. It was ridiculous. Like people would literally like go out of their way to like be nice and smile at you on the street. I was like, wow, they don't do that anywhere on the East Coast.
That's true. Wow.
Totally different vibe out west.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll talk a little bit about that. I want to hear about your road trip. I know you talked a lot about it on your show. Maybe some of our listeners didn't hear that, and I'd love to hear some more about that. Okay, so you are Popeye. You have the program Down the Rabbit Hole and federaljack.com. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been doing the radio thing? How did you even get into it? And how did you get into the spot where you are right now? What was the progression of all this?
Well, I started doing radio 4 years ago, but I've been doing activism and stuff like that since 2006. And we started with Federal Jack and doing like podcasts and stuff years ago here and there and YouTube videos. And a friend of mine who works for another radio show host said to me, you need to do radio. And she's a producer for this guy. And she said, look, you need to do radio. You have a good voice, a good mind for it. You should get on air. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I wouldn't even know how to do that. And I ended up getting hooked up with an internet radio network that was just starting off. And I helped them build. And then I built my show up at the same time. And that was actually 4 years ago. This past April 1st was the 4-year birthday of DTRH. And
cool.
A lot of people... I want to point something out really quick because you brought something up on Freaky Friday the other night with us. I thought it was actually a really important point to cover.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned to me how a lot of people had, when you were first coming to TFR, a lot of people thought, oh my God, isn't that the network with that guy with the big mouth that swears a lot? That would be moi. And a lot of people, they misunderstand my show for a show we did on Saturdays, which was like an anything goes uncensored show where all the hosts would get together on Saturdays called Hangar 18 that we used to do. We would kind of like vent. And unfortunately, more people heard me there because the show was like very, very popular and people would tune in, and the time that it was on, people were tuning in. So like, especially when you came on, some of your newer listeners that came over to TFR would tune in and they'd hear that. And they'd never heard my other show before, my regular radio show, which is Down the Rabbit Hole. And because they'd never heard any of my insight or my wit or my analysis on anything, they'd only ever heard my foul mouth. Some people thought that that's actually how, like, that's all I did on radio. But no, that show was just a show for the host to blow steam off. In all actuality, if you listen to my show Down the Rabbit Hole, I promise you won't be disappointed. In fact, you'll get addicted right quick.
Yeah.
Phoenix did.
Yeah, I did. It definitely did. Very cool. And, yeah, that is all true. As far as rants, I think we all go through them. Some of my listeners, they know very well. I have done a couple rants before because a couple things I will come across when we cover the news. I'm like, are you freaking serious? I mean, like, I can't believe I am actually reading this. And man, a couple times I have gone off. It's rare, but yeah, I know, man. Sometimes you just have to vent and say, what the heck is going on in this crazy world?
Oh, I still do. I mean, yeah. I go off once in a while. In real life, I'm very much on air the same way I am on air. I am in real life. Anyone that's ever gotten a chance to hang out with me in real life can attest to that. And I was in the Coast Guard. I was a firefighter. We have foul mouths. You were a firefighter. So you were in the military yourself. So we both share that. We get how it is. I'm just real like that on air. Over the years, I've learned to refine it a little bit. As my mother used to tell me that. She used to say, you're a wee bit rough around the edges. So I'm trying to add a little polish as I get older over the years. But it is what it is. Yeah,
I tell you what, my primary guidance on that comes from my wife. When I first met her years ago, it's a little kind of rough around the edges too with the language. Just like, she gave me that look, because it's very ladylike sometimes. And, you don't just, I don't know, things you learn. But like you said, in the military, firefighting and all these different things, is a rougher edge. and that's okay. That's just the way it is, man. Um, Alrighty, so you've been doing this for like 4 years now. You said you got into. Oh, wait. You said you were in the Coast Guard. What did you do in the Coast Guard, if you don't mind saying?
I was we unlike like the Navy and the Marines and stuff. Usually, if you have a job, sometimes you have secondary duties, but the Coast Guard you always have secondary duties. So we did pretty much everything, but my main job was damage controlman, which is like a firefighter. That's what we did.
What kind of vessel did you serve on? It was like a big one, or
I was on a base, but I was also on a 200. No. The Coast Guard doesn't have anything really big. Well, big in comparison to the Navy. I was on a 210-foot long patrol ship that the keel was laid on this thing back in 1960. So you can imagine how well it rode in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a 210. We used to call the medium endurance cutters the puke wagons because guaranteed somebody on the crew was hanging off the fantail for a while. So yeah, we used to chase. We used to get migrants. We used to chase drug runners and pirates.
Really? What?
Yes.
Where did you work out of? Over in the Caribbean, or?
Yep, we did the Caribbean from Florida all the way down to the southern tip of South America and back up.
Oh man, that sounds so cool. I had a friend years ago that had been in the Coast Guard, and he was older. And what happened was it was during Vietnam, and he thought, you know what? He was a college student, he's a chemist and everything, but he was getting out of school, and he didn't want to be involved in the war. So he got this bright idea. He said, I'll join the Coast Guard. He goes, that way I'll be safe. He joins the Coast Guard. He goes to his training. Bang, they send him to Vietnam. A lot of people didn't realize, and he didn't realize in the beginning, that the Coast Guard had a heavy presence in Vietnam.
We fought in every major conflict that the country's ever been in. We were the country's first Navy. We used to do, remember I said we had like secondary duties. One of the things I used to do was boardings. One of my jobs at one point during my Coast Guard career was I worked in the armory and taught guys how to shoot. I taught tactical pistol and tactical shotgun because that's what we were using at the time for boardings. You don't want to, you can bring an AR-15 on for a boarding, but if you're going to get into a firefight inside a ship, you want to use really a pistol or a shotgun, especially because you can bounce the shotgun pellets. You can bounce that stuff. If you angle it right, you can ricochet it off of bulkheads. Yeah,
very cool. You can actually shoot around corners, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. If you have to get somebody nail and cover, there's a lot of interesting things. But in the Guard, it's kind of like, what branch were you in?
I was in the Army. I was in the 1st Ranger Battalion, and I was an airborne ranger down in Georgia, Hunter Army Airfield.
No, as a ranger, you guys always have secondary duties. Besides just like your main MOS is, you always have some secondary and even a lot of times 3rd and 4th duties. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but a lot of people, didn't realize, like you were just saying, that the Coast Guard had a heavy presence in all the different wars and did all these different duties. I know my buddy was saying that he was like on a Boston whaler cruising up and down the rivers in Vietnam. They had the Army patrol boats, and they actually had a Coast Guard presence there too, with the same type of patrol boats. And they would go in, they would do like retrievals and recons and all kinds of crazy stuff, things that you didn't think the Coast Guard would be involved in.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff that the general public just doesn't have any idea. We also were the only military branch that actually has an active peacetime mission, which is running into hurricanes and things like that and rescuing people. Like when everybody else is running away from the hurricane, the Navy, they run away from the hurricanes. The Coast Guard, we turn the ship around and head towards it to go rescue people. So,
oh man, that is just crazy. I've seen some of the Coast Guard things they used to do on the Weather Channel, with the choppers, the retrieval, and all that rescue stuff. It's absolutely fascinating. It's really good. It's a good service. That is, whenever you see the Coast Guard and you see actions like that, and you see somebody actually defending our borders, for real, it makes you think of, this is what the military should be. These are the honorable actions that our government should be involved in, and what the military should be involved in. So, anyway, that's really cool, man. I'm glad that you were able to serve that way. Why did you leave? Just decide to change your?
No, I got medically retired. I was injured, and you know how the military is. They medically retire you. I actually had a JAG, and I fought to stay in, but they retired me. And then once they retire you, they throw you to the VA wolves, and it's up to you to get whatever you need to get from the VA and fight for your benefits and stuff. But that was actually a harder fight than anything I ever faced in the military.
Wow. Yeah, the legal stuff.
Seriously. It was easier to take down like boatloads of drug runners than it was to get my benefits from the VA. That ought to tell you something.
It sounds like the same analogy. It's like 6-1, half dozen the other.
Technically, Phoenix, the people that run the government are drug runners. So,
oh man, we were talking about that today. I was talking to one of our sponsors about that today, Bob Gilpatrick. We're talking about the mob and basically how we're being run by the mob. We have the Chicago mob that's in power right now. We just have the Southern mob, and the New York mob. They've been in and out, and it's like a turf war. The mob. It's crazy, when you look at all this stuff. That's really fascinating. You were talking about activism. I think when we come back from the break here, maybe you can go in. You say you started out as an activist, and you got federaljack.com and all that. Maybe you can tell everybody and get us all up to speed exactly what this activism was.
Sure, no worries. It attracted. I'll tease the audience with this. It attracted the attention of the FBI.
Oh, jeez.
I had them come knock on my door at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, man. Are you serious? Wait a minute.
I swear to God.
Hold on. Oh, what the heck?
Yeah, seriously.
No kidding. Wow. I can't wait to hear all this. Oh, my God.
Let the listeners salivate on that one while we go to break.
Oh, yeah. What was it that he came in on Popeye for? Very cool. Anyway, we're going to break right now, and we have special guest Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole joining us tonight. We'll be right back after the break. And we are back here on Phoenix Rising Radio on Truth Frequency Radio with our special guest this evening, Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole and federaljack.com. And Popeye is basically giving us a very good timeline of how he became a radio host and what drew him to all of this. And we're getting to the interesting part. He left a little teaser here before the break about something about activism and something about a 3-letter agency knocking on his door. So what's up with that, man?
Well, my awakening started in like 2005. And I already never believed the government anyway and never trusted them. I already knew about the so-called Illuminati and, some of those secret society groups from when I was younger. And I had read books about it and stuff. But I didn't put 2 and 2 together when 9/11 happened. I was very close. I was a firefighter in New Jersey at the time. It affected you. Understand, like as a firefighter, it affects you emotionally differently. And I helped out. I volunteered as much as we could. We were down at the day of. We were down at the command center at the old. It's gone now, but Giant Stadium was there. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just a ton of memories from that day, then helping out with the Red Cross and everything else. So then I had joined the military, and then I was very gung-ho, and I was very, blinded and, just emotionally wrapped up in things. And once I was forced to slow down, and I got medically discharged, I started to look at things a little differently. You get forced to look at things differently. Sometimes life affords you this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And long story short, I started off by I was reading a lot of books written by guys that were on the ground, a lot of Marines that were fighting in Fallujah, and I was reading these books, and these books were saying things that were completely different than what Fox News or CNN or MSNBC was saying. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter if MSNBC and Fox were arguing; neither one of them was covering the things that these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines were writing about. So I started to suck up as much information as I could. And in the midst of this, I happened to run in. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this movie, and I don't like the later versions of it. I think it was part 2 and part 3 kind of went off the rails. But the original movie Zeitgeist, a friend of mine was watching it, and he was at the part where the Federal Reserve was.
Right.
And I said, "Oh, this looks like an interesting movie." He told me where to go look for it. Long story short, I watched it. Well, the part I had to rewind and watch twice was the 9/11 section. I kind of already knew about the Federal Reserve thing, but the 9/11 thing, it affected me. And at first, I was like, "This can't be true." And I started researching as much as I could because as a firefighter, you're like, "No way," right? Mm-hmm. Now, I was a and I still am, a certified arson investigator. I took a year and a half worth of courses through the New Jersey State Fire College, and I took training at the Morris County Firefighters Academy for arson investigation and explosion investigation. And I immediately, like, the emotions, the PTS, I call it, I don't like to say PTSD. I've done shows on this because there's no disorder in having post-traumatic stress. So the PTS that I had from that event, which everybody has, okay, that whole thing was a trauma-based mind control event.
Yeah.
So it was blocking me from looking at some of these glaringly obvious things. And as soon as I started to look at it with my investigator brain, and, like, using logic and turning off the emotion, I was like, oh my God. It was like right in your face.
Yeah.
So I started to eat up as much information as I could. I mean, just like not sleeping for days on end, where I would be up for 3 or 4 days, to the point where my late wife, Merce, would say she used to get really concerned about me. And she would be like, dude, you need to get rest. And I would be like, I can't sleep. I had this urge to just engulf information, just, like as much as I could for like 2 years straight. And I just researched and read about everything under the sun because everything kept connecting. I kept realizing that things were connecting. I liken it to when you see what's really going on in the world. If you've ever had the chance to see a Rembrandt painting in person, not a picture of it, but one of Rembrandt's actual paintings. Like I said, if any of the listeners ever get a chance to go to Europe and go to, like, say, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, you'll see some of Rembrandt's paintings in real life. Now, you can go up and focus on the minutia of the painting and look at the details, and you'll be amazed. Trust me, you should do that, because it's amazing to see the detail he was able to get with the materials that he had at his disposal at the time. But what you have to, his paintings are so huge, you have to step back like 15, 20, 30 feet to take in the whole painting, because some of his paintings are the size of a wall. Well, the vast conspiracy that is woven is the same thing. It's important to understand the minutia, but to see everything, you have to kind of like step back and see the whole picture. And that's what was going on in that like 2.5 years of me just taking all this information and barely sleeping. And I mean, all I focused on was research. No sleep, barely any sleep, barely any food, just research as much as I could take in, to the point where I'd have to stop for a day or two.
Right.
Because it was incredible the amount of stuff that I was taking in. And then once I took it in and I started analyzing it, that's when I was like, all right. And I already had Federal Jack. And that's about the time that a couple years later is when the radio show, everything kind of just like rolled. Like the universe kind of just played out this path for me.
Right.
Just like all of us, I believe.
I agree. It does. It just kind of opens up. I had my same experience along those lines, but it was years earlier, and it had to do with a few incidents that I had personally seen. Personally, firsthand, big things. I was privy to information that you would think, and being a naive young soldier, I would think, wow, this is huge. This is going to be on the nightly news. This is something major. I'm talking about in other countries, major stuff. No word of it. Totally silent. And you know what I'm talking about on all this. Now, Popeye, I'm looking here at your timeline, what you're saying, the 9/11, the trauma of the 9/11, it was shocking to everybody, but even more so, like you said, to people in close. I mean, I know a couple people who were directly affected. You probably know someone who died there. I know people who almost died there, and all these crazy stories that went on. So the emotions, this was the Hegelian dialectic. I mean, in force. I mean, huge in force. This emotional trauma that they put on everyone and how they played everyone. And it sounds like to me that after the strong emotions and the experience of being there at ground zero, you, like many, many people, said, you know what, I'm going to rise up to this occasion and I'm going to serve my country. And that is when you became a member of the Coast Guard to do that. But somewhere along that line afterwards, after you got out of the Coast Guard, I guess the reality of what happened, and again, you were introduced to this by the Zeitgeist film.
What's even worse, like I said, like I had read other stuff, and one of the things I had read in the Guard was Bill Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse, and I got about halfway through the book, and I couldn't read it anymore because I started getting headaches. I couldn't figure out why. Years later, I realized what it was. All that mind control that they put us through in basic
Yeah.
is conflicting with what Cooper was writing about. And he was ex-Navy intelligence. So here I respect him, being a sailor. And this guy's writing like the exact opposite of what everything that I've been programmed with. And I literally started getting headaches reading the book.
Yeah.
And then I put it down and I didn't think anything about it until a couple years later when I saw my friend watching Zeitgeist right when it first came out. And I was like, what is that? And then I went back and I reread the whole book. I read Cooper's book in like 2 days, and my jaw was just on the floor.
An interesting thing about Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, there's actually what he did, and he was crafty about this. There's some sections of it that were actually just not really true. But there were extreme great truths that he had laced through the book, and he did it intentionally. So when someone thumbed through the book, or if someone gave a cursory look at the book, they would dismiss it. But within the book, and I mean, you could literally go through these different sections, and it was deep research with deep facts. I mean, he had it documented. It was pretty intense, and he did that intentionally. And I know he did that intentionally because I spoke to the man a few times before his demise that happened to him.
Assassinated him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, baby. They shot him right in the head.
Close range.
Yes, they did.
Go watch the documentary about him. Like for the listeners, because Phoenix already knows. He's a smart man. He's already researched. He knows they executed Bill. Like when they shot him, they say, "Oh, he died from the gunfight." No. After the gun battle was over, the cops got up to him, and one of them shot him. I think they said 4 to 6 inches away from his head. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's assassination. See, that's murder.
The thing about it was, and the reason that happened, Bill Cooper warned everybody that 9/11 was going to happen, and he talked about they were going to blame it on someone named Osama bin Laden. No one had ever heard of Osama bin Laden. That's when I first heard about him. I started doing research. He said they are going to pull a terrorist attack off. More than likely, it's going to be a major thing. I think it was even talking about possibly airplanes, and they were going to blame it on Osama bin Laden to start a war, and he did a broadcast on that. You can find it out there. But I digress from that. I don't want to get sidetracked in what we're talking about here. Well, I guess it's not sidetracked. That's all part of it. Okay, so again, please just continue on. Continue on.
Well, just once I read Cooper's book and stuff, and once I got out, I started researching this stuff. It kind of just all linked together, and then it led me down the road I'm at now. And as I've done my radio show over the years, the show has evolved itself. Like my first couple shows were nothing about just conspiracies, like pointing out all this stuff and me analyzing different things and looking at different conspiracies and then breaking it down for people to understand very easily. Mm-hmm. And I still do that, but there's so much more to it now. I mean, the show's grown so much over the years. I do that. I mean, I rip apart mainstream media lies and stuff, and I take talking heads to what I call the woodshed. And mm-hmm. beat them with the proverbial stick, and just point out all the lies and stuff. But besides dissecting all that, one of the things I've really been focusing on, at least the past year, but especially the past 7 or 8 months since my wife passed away, has been like helping other people heal, like through the experiences that I've gone through and the pain that I've gone through. I'm trying to, as I heal myself, I'm trying to help others heal as well. Like I verbally talk about it on air often, mm-hmm. and I do shows about it, and I discuss it on Facebook openly. And I had a choice because I knew, being a public figure when my wife passed away, that I had 2 options of dealing with this. It was either I dealt with it publicly or I dealt with it very privately. And I decided that I didn't want to waste her life and nobody know how awesome of a person she was and the effect that she had on people. I would rather expose them to her and hope that they would then in turn put out that same energy and effort into the universe, into making the world a better place. So that's what I've been doing. And doing that, like explaining to people about her, has inspired many people to change their lives for the better, which is awesome, and do random acts of kindness and things like that. And then also me dealing with what I have to deal with. I have post-traumatic stress from her death. She had a severe asthma attack right in front of me, and I did CPR on her, and she died in my arms, and I brought her back to life only to have to take her off life support 3 days later because she was brain dead.
Mm.
So it was it was a very traumatic thing for me to deal with, and I still have sometimes flashbacks and stuff to the event and things. So as I heal from that, and other things that have contributed to post-traumatic stress, I openly talk about it on air, and it actually, I've had nothing but positive results and positive feedback because of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I did it the first time I did a show on post-traumatic stress. It was right before I went on the road trip, and the entire time I was gone, my email had gotten filled up with emails. My Facebook messenger, the messages on Facebook had got there. There was over like 200 messages from different people.
Wow.
About just that show. The comments on YouTube. It's amazing how deep people were touched by that show. Sure. So I just did a second show on it last week with a friend of mine who's a shaman named William Whitecrow, who he himself is a Special Forces veteran from Vietnam, and he lost his child. And he had kind of the same situation where he had to do CPR on his child. And William came on and he talked very openly about what he went through, and he cried a little bit. And it was very therapeutic, and people really, that kind of stuff resonates with people. So,
because it's real.
Exactly.
That's life, real. Man. This kind of ties in. There's all these serendipities and synchronicities. Popeye, right before the program this evening, I was talking to someone about medications and depression and things like that. This girl said she went into someone, a close family member, not just a girl, someone I love very dearly. But she lives out in Texas. She went in for a back pain, and she saw a new doctor she hadn't seen. And this lady immediately starts writing all these prescriptions. She doesn't look at her. She doesn't no x-rays or anything, doesn't interview her. Are you on other medications? No blood work. She starts giving her all these crazy prescriptions, and one of them's an antidepressant, and some of them are things she shouldn't have been giving her, like Zoloft, Prozac, stuff like that, And anyway, this antidepressant, she gives it to her, and she goes, "I don't want that. I'm not depressed." She goes, "Well, I think you need it." And this chemical suppression of who we are, I don't think is really good. People get mad, people get sad, people get depressed. It's part of the human experience. And yes, traumatic stress syndrome is a reality, and it's something we go through as human beings. And talking about the tragedy that happened to your wife and being there, that touches all of us, because, I've talked to my listeners before about the condition of man, and the fact of it is, people like to prepare for things and all of this stuff. But the fact is, man, nobody gets out of here alive. None of us. And, something happened in this society where we just remove death from everybody. Someone dies and people go to the funeral home, they see him, they look better than they've ever looked. And, just people from a distance look at him. Years ago, people handled the dead. When before there were funeral parlors, the family handled that, and the frailty of human life was a reality with everyone. And what you did by sharing that helped a lot of people, and I'm sure it continually does help a lot of people. It sounds like to me you went through a really intense thing, man. The 9/11 thing, the military thing, getting hurt in the military, then the shock of the activism thing, and the reality of waking up. And I do believe that you skipped over the part where you had a knock on the door. We may get to that. But then the tragic part of your wife's asthma attack and what happened. You went through a lot in a relatively short amount of time that many people don't even experience in a whole lifetime. And that brings us up to now. And how has all of this changed you? How has this brought you to this point? And has it changed who you are?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. You don't go through things like that without changing as a person. Just in the past 7 or 8 months, I've changed drastically after losing my wife, and having gone through that, you look at life very differently. The only way I guess I could say is it's changed me in so many ways. my perspective, I guess the biggest way it's changed me is my perspective on life is drastically different. I used to get more, you get bogged down in the minutia and the retarded things in life, and you realize that after you've gone through something like this, that stuff doesn't matter. One of the first things I said to a lot of my friends who were married was, I said, do you guys have arguments over stupid stuff? Because most married couples do. Even my friends that weren't married, that were just, serious relationships. And I said, stop arguing over the toilet seat. Stop arguing over all that stupid stuff, because you know what happens when that person's gone? You miss that. You miss those are the little things that you wish that were still around. So, and you also realize that whatever you were angry at the person for, it's gone. That anger is no longer there. The only thing you have left is love. Like my wife and I had plenty of arguments. When she passed, I didn't have any anger towards her. None. There was, even if it was something that I was holding resent, because we all do that. I was with her for 9 years, so there were things that like she had done, in the past that I might have still been kind of pissed about. And same thing with her, we all do that. That stuff doesn't mean anything, Phoenix. I'm telling you right now, it means absolutely jack. It means zilch, zero, nothing. The only thing I felt for her after she had passed, and when she had her asthma attack and when she was in ICU for 3 days, I wasn't mad at her. The only thing I felt towards her was love. That's it. And that's the only thing I feel for her after her passing, which means that that's the only thing that really matters. So the rest of that is all crap. It's exactly what it is. It's not important. So what lesson can I bestow upon all of the listeners out there out of this? Well, it's real simple. Don't take what you've got right in front of you for granted. Take a step back, look at what you've got, and appreciate it a little bit more. Don't argue so much. I'm telling you, this wasn't planned. My wife and I were laughing and joking 5 minutes before.
Wow.
And I was actually getting ready to go on air and do my show that night. It was about 8:30 at night when it happened. And I actually used to be in your time slot. And I was in your time slot at the time. And I was getting ready to go on air and do my show at 10, and it was about 8:30, and I was in my office, and she had her asthma attack in my bedroom, and I had to run across the house. So it happened that fast. Within just a few short seconds, I lost her. She was gone, and I had no control over it. Okay, so you don't, and you have to. It sucks, and that's part of like me, dealing with the loss. Her loss is one of the things I deal with. I deal with a lot of guilt because there was nothing I could do. I tried. Gave her CPR. I did everything I could, but there was absolutely nothing I could do. Her tracheal spasm that she had was so powerful. It had literally, even the EMTs, or they were paramedics, they had a problem getting her throat open to get a tube in her. Wow. So it was really bad, and it was very traumatic. Okay, and it happened in such a fast instant. One of the lessons I took away from this, okay, and I have to be philosophical about this, otherwise she died in vain. And the reason I share this with everybody is so that she didn't. So that way, what I've gone through and what happened to her helps enrich other people, because then it wasn't in vain. And what I took away from it was, life is short. Literally 5 minutes before, we were laughing and joking around, and she gave me a kiss. And then she died. Wow. So you don't waste your time fighting with each other over stupid crap. Just love one another, for real, because you don't know. You never know. So and the world needs more of that. If we had less negativity, less fighting, when we yell at each other, we're putting negativity not only toward each other but out in the universe. And we're helping unbalance the scale with more negativity. I know this sounds all hokey pokey, new agey, but it's not. There's two frequencies the universe operates on: fear and love. Okay, hate comes out of fear, but it's fear and love, and the world needs more love. Okay, right now everything's fear, so it's this low, slow vibrational frequency, and that's what you hear when you turn on the news and everything else. And you're taught to be afraid of your neighbor and not talk to anybody. People need to live in the love frequency, which is this high-pitched, fast vibration. Okay, we need to be better to each other. We need to be just better human beings. Like, you're going down the street, you see somebody that needs help, don't just blow past them. Stop and help them. If they're, the side of the road, they have a flat tire or something, try to help them. just do good deeds because it's the right thing to do. All right, put more love out there. If you live in the love frequency, then things will get better. That's one of the things I've learned from this whole thing. I mean, I already knew that, but it kind of reinforced it to 1,000-fold.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, her death was not in vain, because all of that is so true. And this is life school. We continually learn. We continually advance as long as we get the lessons. And to love one another is a big, big deal. And like you said, there's two different frequencies, and it really affects everyone. It emanates out. If someone's in a bad mood and dour and negative, people can really pick up the vibe. But if you have love and positive thing and joy emanating from your heart, man, people pick up on it, and it can change the entire workplace. It can change your family. It can change the grocery store. If you're standing in line at the grocery store, all these things. So, man, I tell you what.
Of energy, Phoenix. And I know your listeners know this. I've listened to your show. So I know you know what I'm talking about. You guys are very connected. Your listeners are very connected. We give off energy. Our very DNA itself, if you look at the DNA strand, it's a sending and receiving antenna. Okay, it's an straight up and down antenna, and it's a circular antenna. One sending, one receiving. Okay, so we can pick up energy and we can give it off. So we need to learn that and understand that, learn that that's not hokey pokey new age crap. It's real, and that we need to start giving off that love vibration, that love frequency more often, and not be afraid to do so, because it's not wimpy to do so. I mean, you have two former firefighters and military guys telling you it's okay to love.
Sure it is. And it really is. You know what's kind of freaking me out? Dude, you just described tomorrow's show. I had a long talk with Bob Gilpatrick of Boomers, and he described what tomorrow's broadcast is going to be about. His special thing he does. It's about DNA, the frequencies of DNA, and how we can affect other people by the vibration of our DNA. You sounded like him talking today. You're freaking me out.
Great minds think alike. And it's the truth.
Yeah, it is the truth. It's really real. And if you guys want to hear the mechanics on it and the scientifics, listen to Bob Gilpatrick tomorrow, and you will see I am not kidding you, and I'm not joking Popeye. What Popeye just said, Bob Gilpatrick told me today in a few other words, but exactly the same thing. Really cool, dude. Synchronicities like this is a confirmation that you're on the right track.
I agree. I totally agree. And it's interesting that you had that convo, but the universe does work in mysterious ways, brother.
Oh, yes, it does. It most certainly does. And we're rolling up on a break here. We'll see what else we have to talk about here, and maybe a road trip and a few other things when we come back from this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the second hour of Phoenix Rising Radio this evening with our special guest, Popeye of Down the Rabbit Hole, federaljack.com. Popeye, before the break, we were talking about the tragedy that had happened to you, and basically a string of really traumatic things that you had experienced and you have experienced. I believe the passing of your wife was last fall, and personally from me, condolences to you for that loss. Where are we today? What has happened? What grew from that incident, and what has happened since then?
Well, now I'm back on air. I went on an epic road trip, which I can get into. It was very interesting, and I've actually done a few things to honor her, which helped me heal, which I would suggest anybody that's gone through what I've gone through, you do something of the, your own version of it, but something along the lines of it. Like, I take it very head on, and I promise at some point, in fact, let me get to this right now. Before I get into this, let me just touch on the FBI thing, because I know
Thank you. I forgot.
I teased your audience. No, I forgot too, and I totally teased your audience. So to touch on this quickly, because I promised I would, we used to do a lot of street actions. And we started, when We Are Change first started in New York, when Luke Rudowski started it, we hooked up with him, and we created We Are Change Miami down here. We had federaljack.com, but the guys that do Federal Jack with me, we started doing street actions, and we were already doing like screenings and stuff at FIU, which is a college down here. And we slowly we started doing DVD giveaways, and we were burning like hundreds of DVDs, and then 50, 60 people would show up, and we'd be on street corners handing DVDs out.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the End the Fed movement came about. And then the End the Fed, like from groups like that, and then the End the Fed movement led into what is known as the Tea Party now. That's where that all sprung from.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to go out and do all that kind of stuff, and we used to have undercover feds come in. That's where Federal Jack's name actually came from. Federal Jack was the nickname that we gave one of these undercover guys that used to show up to protests and be like, we should blow things up and we should do all this crap. And we were like, this guy's a Fed. So we made a page to expose him, and it was titled Federal Jack.
No way.
Yeah,
man, that's
just
fun.
grew to a news website and to the
my God,
this huge archive of information. But that's where it originated back in like the end of 2005, beginning 2006. And the guys behind it, there's a couple guys behind it that had like put it together, and I got involved right when they put it together, and I was just inundating them with so much stuff. They were like, can you take it over? And then I took it over, and then we grew into the beast that it is today. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of street actions and stuff. So long story short, we would go to like city council meetings as well. And the city that I lived in, we went to our city council meeting, and we got our water at the time. I don't live in that city anymore, but the city I lived in at the time got its water from the city next door. So when we protested about fluoride, we had to go to the city council next door.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, we talked about fluoride a couple times, and it was close to 9/11. I don't know, within a month or two. And I brought up 9/11. And after that, it was like, I don't know, about 2-3 days after that, that night I'd been called a Nazi too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got called the Nazi by one of the city council members, who, after I made a YouTube video about her calling me a Nazi, I had people from all over the country emailing her, like PhDs and stuff, being like, Popeye's not, and he's a very good host, and he's a researcher, and he's a journalist. Mm-hmm. And she actually contacted me on the phone, and to her credit, her and I actually became friends. She apologized, and she didn't understand one of the symbols on the front of my card. She thought I was, trying to create like a new Hitler Youth, and I was pointing out that no, the DHS had made a new Hitler Youth by training the Boy Scouts to take on veterans and active shooter drills, which they've actually done.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't understand that though. Now she does, and she's actually much more awake than she was years ago. Anyway, so that, and then the mayor, because of that, I met a local blogger, and I took up her plight against the police, because she was reporting on stuff, and then the mayor would use code enforcement and the police to harass her because she lived in the city, but I didn't live in his city, so I was out of his reach. So nanny boo boo. Mm-hmm. Well, because he couldn't sick his little people on me, he decided to sick the FBI on me, and he called the FBI and told the FBI I was an extremist. And because when you go to a city council meeting, you fill out paperwork, I was stupid, and I filled out my real name and my real address, and because they make you fill out these little forms. And I mean, you can lie, I guess, or whatever, but I filled out my real name and address. I really didn't care. Mm-hmm. And the FBI used that to come knock on my door at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And they do this obligatory stick their foot in the door thing. Mm-hmm. It's a mind thing. They teach us that when you do that, when you stick your foot in the door, cops, any federal agent stuff are always taught you do. It's like a subconscious, like, let me in, and people just acquiesce and open the door. Right. And by letting the agent or the officer in, you've now engaged in a contract with them. This is all admiralty law. People don't know this. So now you've engaged in a contract. Now they can come in and mess with you. So he stuck his foot in the door, and I was half asleep. Mm-hmm. I have an 8-pound Shih Tzu who tried running out and biting them. I scooped her up, and I just had surgery, so my other arm is all wrapped up. And the guy goes, FBI, and he sticks his badge in my face and tries to come in the door, and I kicked his foot out of the door. I said, no, we can do this outside. And I pushed them with my foot, holding the dog and my one bandaged arm out the front door. And I'm like half asleep trying to rub the sleep out of my eyes. And I'm like, because they didn't show up in suits. Mm-hmm. They showed up down in Florida. They wear like tropical uniforms. So they were wearing khakis and like blue golf shirts. I thought they were the maintenance guys at my apartment.
Yeah.
Because that's the same way the maintenance guys dressed, and I was waiting for them. So I was like, oh, the maintenance guys are here. And I opened the door, and I get a badge stuffed in my face. Mm. And then they were asking me all sorts of questions, like if I knew any real terrorists. Or they said, have you ever been contacted by terrorists? And I laughed. I said, wait, real ones or like the ones you guys create?
Oh my goodness.
Didn't think that was funny.
I'm sure they didn't.
No, I didn't think. And then they asked me about my
Uh,
hand. Oh, how'd you hurt your hand? I said, well, I'm sure you already know because I'm sure you've read my file. So you know I had an operation at the VA hospital only a few days ago. I said, but here, let me show you. And the one guy's like, no, 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 we're good. And I unwrapped it and I showed him the stitches. I had my whole hand cut open from the palm of my hand all the way up into my forearm.
wow.
I showed him. Well, the one turned white. The one was kind of okay with it, but the other one turned white, and I thought he was going to puke, Phoenix. And then they quickly exited and left after that. And I was like, have a nice day, gentlemen. If you're going to, you have to be honest with them. You can't lie to a federal agent because if you
Absolutely
lie,
not.
they've already done their homework on you before they came to your front door. And there's a law that if you lie to a federal agent, they can arrest you.
Yes.
So it's like an entrapment game. But you also don't have to kiss their ass. There's a line you want to tread on. You don't want to be too much of an idiot. But I kind of, when I have to deal with government agents or anything like that, I tend to make them uncomfortable. It's the same thing I do when I go through TSA. Like the last time I had to fly and TSA did the pat down, I moaned while they were doing it. And I was like, thank you. And the guy looked at me and like, he was like, you're good to go. And I was like, have a nice day.
Oh man.
Just make them uncomfortable, man.
Oh yeah, and give it back to them. Make them feel uncomfortable instead of you feeling uncomfortable.
When I came through customs, I did that. Okay, so fast forward now. I'll explain what I mean by when I came through customs. So, this past, she passed away. Mercedes was my wife, and her name was Mercedes, but you'll hear me refer to her as Mercedes because that's what she went by. She went by Mercedes for short. So anyway, she passed away in October, and my friends, one of my friends had an apartment in Amsterdam, and he knew that that was her favorite city in the world and that she had wanted to move there. So they flew me over, and my friend let me stay at his apartment for free, obviously, and he actually gave me the apartment. Like, he wasn't there for a week. He let me have the place for a week. And I took some of my wife's ashes over there, and I spread her out in 3 spots. One spot was the canals. Where my mother, a little bit of a backstory, my mother she was born in Holland, and 9 years before, my wife had gone with me as my girlfriend to go spread her ashes out.
Oh wow.
All my mother's ashes out, because my mother had passed away when she was 55, so I took her ashes back to Holland, spread her out through the canals of Amsterdam. So then 9 years later, I was doing the same thing with my wife's ashes.
Oh wow.
And then I also spread her in Vondel Park, which is this huge park in Amsterdam. It's really beautiful. And the third spot that I put her with, and I won't say how I did it, but there's 2 famous women in Amsterdam. There's Anne Frank, which I'm sure you all know who Anne Frank is.
Right, the Diary of Anne Frank.
Right. And then there's Saskia, which is Rembrandt, the painter who I mentioned earlier, his wife. Rembrandt was one of Mercedes' favorite painters. So I spread, some of her is buried with Rembrandt's wife. I won't say how I did it, but I mean, she's in there.
Wow.
I wasn't disrespectful to the grave at all or anything like that, but she's in there and she'll forever be with Rembrandt's wife. So, I think it would have been it was a very fitting romantic tribute to a very beautiful soul. So that's how I started my therapy of like dealing with it.
Right.
And then I decided months ago that I was going to do this road trip. And her and I had intended to do a road trip a couple of years ago, and we couldn't because of storms and stuff. So she never got a chance to see the Grand Canyon or the huge meteor crater that was out in the middle of Arizona. So I decided that I was going to take her ashes to the Grand Canyon and to the meteor crater anyway.
Right.
And the meteor crater, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not. The ashes thing there, I was kind of like 70-30. Yes, I was going to do it, but definitely the Grand Canyon. And on the way out, I decided I wanted to do the meteor crater as well. So I got out to the Grand Canyon, and over like a 25-mile section, I spread her ashes out. And I have to give credit to my friend, one of my best friends in the world, Christina, went with me. And it was a very rough time, and I needed that feminine energy there to kind of like balance it out and help me. And she was there for me. She took a lot of video, which I really needed. I wanted to document the whole event, because you can only do what I did once. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You only get one shot at that.
Oh, you got it, man.
I wanted to make sure I had somebody to document and be there for me, and she did just a hell of a job. So I just want to give her a big shout out and a thank you. But so over this like 25-mile section of the canyon, I spread her ashes out, and between that and I like a couple of the spots, I threw her actually into the canyon winds, and if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, pictures don't do it justice. You have to go see it. Just to hear the wind coming through the Grand Canyon is like one of the most serene, awesome things I think I've ever heard ever in my whole life. It was amazing. And the view is just absolutely breathtaking. It literally, I've seen a lot of stuff in my life. This took my breath away. I was like, whoa.
Wow.
It's like that. It's the Grand Canyon itself is perspective changing. So if you ever get a chance, I suggest everybody do it. And we'll get into the road trip part of that, which will lead me to the perspective thing in a second. But anyway, long story short, between that and then spreading her ashes at the meteor crater, it was very therapeutic for me. Anybody that goes through loss, like I'm going through, I suggest you do something of the same to honor your loved one. So it's very therapeutic. And again, I share this because I want people to realize that, like, I'm going through this, but I want to be honest about it so that you can benefit from it too. And it's very therapeutic. It really will help you. You don't have to do exactly what I did. I don't expect you to. Do something that was special to that person. But if you honor them in a way and you can use them to help better the world, then even though their loss has still felt drastically by you and always will be, at least in my case, I've found that it's been a lot easier for me to deal with it because I know that she's still bettering the world. Today, for instance, I emptied out the closet finally of her clothes and stuff. I needed to because I needed space. And I've been living out of my hampers for 7 months because I just didn't want to touch her clothing. And I needed to get into the closet because we had literally just moved into my house. We just bought a house like a month before.
Oh, wow.
We hadn't even finished unpacking yet.
Oh, man, that's hard.
Exactly. So I've been going through that, and I had to unpack the closet and everything. So I packed up her stuff today, and after I packed up all her stuff, I called up a local women's shelter, an abused women's shelter, and I asked them if they could use the clothing, and they said yes. And I bagged it all up, and there was like 7 or 8 bags, including all her shoes and everything else. And I took it down and I donated it to the abused women's shelter because my wife she was a yogi and she looked at things very simply, and she would tell me not to hold on to material objects because she can no longer use them. And that's how she was. And I know that if I was going to get rid of them, I wanted it to make a difference. So I donated it to an abused women's shelter. So she's still helping from beyond even after she's gone. So, like, doing stuff like that is very therapeutic. So if somebody else is going through loss, you too can do the same thing. You too can help, like, maybe perhaps you call up if you lost a husband. You could maybe, if it's time to get rid of the clothes, call up the local VA hospital and see if they need clothes for any veterans that are in the hospital that are up in the ward where they're dying. And they'd like a fresh pair of clothes or something. And a lot of those guys don't have family. You never know. And if you have a husband and the clothes are just sitting in the closet, maybe you do that. You better someone's life. If your wife has passed like mine, and you have clothes hanging in the closet or in the attic, call up the local abused women's shelter or something to that effect, and say, hey, look, don't just give it to Goodwill because they'll sell it. Do actually go out and be the change. That's part of what I preach, because Marseille's favorite quote was "Be the change." She actually lived her life like that, as did I. In fact, if you've seen pictures of me, you'll notice that on the right side of my neck, I actually have "Be the change" tattooed on the right side of my neck. So it's the Gandhi quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." So that's part of actually doing it. Don't just give your stuff to Goodwill because they sell it. Go out and actually give it to a group that it's going to better someone's life. That's changing the world for a better place. That's how and by doing stuff like that, it's also therapeutic. And not just if you lost somebody, whatever kind of post-traumatic stress you're dealing with, by dealing with it head on and figuring out positive ways like that to deal with it is the best way that I know how to get through it. Because post-traumatic stress is a completely natural reaction to something that's very drastic that you're going through. And it depends on the individual too. Phoenix, you were in the military. I'm sure you were as a Ranger were probably exposed to many horrific things. Oh, yeah. You've probably seen a lot of, you've probably seen people die without a shadow of a doubt. That, to you, now, that might not traumatize you, but to some people it might be very traumatic. Car accidents can cause PTS. Anything can cause PTS. A lot of people think it's just war and veterans. No. anything that you can be considered traumatic to an individual. I mean, you don't want to go overboard and just claim everything to be post-traumatic stress. But if you think about it, there's a lot of stuff out there that can cause it. Car accidents, rape, somebody you're very close to dying, them dying in your arms like something I went through, your friends being shot, things like that, being shot at. There's a lot of stuff that can cause post-traumatic stress. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And once you start to realize like what's going on, then you can take it head on and deal with it. Again, it's just a natural reaction to something that you're going through that your brain doesn't consider natural or to be traumatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. These are natural things. That a lot of, I think, like doctors, psychologists would, they want to push medication on everybody. And it's important to experience these things and deal with them. And the advice you're giving to everyone, Popeye, is priceless. It really is. And I hope people are taking note of this because, like I said, nobody gets out of here alive, and we deal with these things. This is part of the human existence. This is part of life school. This is what we experience, and it's how we deal with these things, how we handle these things that really define who we are. And how we define who we are really affects our environment and those around us, the people who we love. So I really appreciate this and all these tips. It's really good.
I try to pass out my little seeds of wisdom wherever I go. It's amazing how different of a perspective you have on life when you go through something like that. And the road trip itself, which I know we got a break in about 6 minutes, but we can get into detail about that a little bit. And if we have to carry over to the other segment, it doesn't really matter. But like just doing a road trip like that is very life-changing and perspective-shifting, to say the least. Mm-hmm. I mean, getting out of the city. Christina, my friend, the young lady that went with me, she brought up a good point. When we were outside of, like, I don't want to say civilization. I mean, there was towns and stuff around us, but we were outside of like big civilization. There were points where there was like nothing around us. So we were out in the middle of nowhere for probably like 4 or 5 days, and we came into Colorado, and we were driving through Denver, mm-hmm. and she said to me, "Do you feel like city post-traumatic stress kicking in, like half sarcastic, half not?" And I said, "Yeah, like you could feel it." And we were pondering whether it was the Wi-Fi, the cell phone signals, just the vibe of the people in general, but maybe a mix of all of it. But when you're away from that, mm-hmm. you're out in the middle of nowhere, which, by the way, when next Agenda 21 pushing moron that says to me that we're overpopulated in this country, I'm going to send them out to I-40 east or westbound in New Mexico and tell them to look to the left or to the right.
So true.
Seriously, like, get out of your living room, because most of those people that are pushing that have never been out on the open road. The only thing they know is these big cities, so they don't really have a reference point. Or if they're flying, which that doesn't really give you a reference point either, because you really can't get an idea of how big and how vast this country is until mm-hmm. you're driving around in it. But it's perspective changing on a grand scale. You just notice so many things. Like I said, we were driving through the city, and you get like this just vibe. It's disgusting. I don't know how to describe it other than it's anxiety inducing. Yeah. It literally is. Oh yeah,
it's the energy. The energy you were talking about earlier about the DNA and emitting all of this. That's it in mass. You know, I've talked to Simon Atkins about this. Dr. Simon Atkins. He lives down in Uruguay, and I've experienced this by being out of the country for extended periods of time in remote areas. And I've felt this a couple times, and I've talked to him about it, and he agrees. And what you're talking about, Popeye, is very real. And if you spend and you can do this country to country. If you are, say, like in a third world country for an extended period of time, and you get on an airplane and you fly back to the United States, I am not kidding you, man. When they open the door and you walk out, you can feel it hit you. It's like boom. It's like this energy. It's like this heaviness that hits you. And it's a real physical thing that you can feel. And no, it's not the different pressure because you're coming out of the plane, because the plane's depressurized, man. It is an energetic, and it could be the electronics. But Well, more than likely it is the electronics. We're like bathed in the soup of it, but also the energetics of the people. So, yeah, what you guys experience, 100% real.
It was crazy to feel it because, you know, I mean, I don't live in the big city, but I still, there's, you know, there's cell phone towers and stuff here. And not that there wasn't cell phone towers out there, but it's just different. Like, we were standing out on the edge of the Grand Canyon where we were, there wasn't really any cell phone signal. There was a lot of parts of the country where we were where there wasn't really good or any cell phone reception at all. And you know what? It was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it was nice to unplug. I can't lie and say I missed being on Facebook or Twitter or the internet in general.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I honestly didn't. The only thing I would do is I have Instagram hooked up to my phone,
Mm-hmm.
and it automatically posts. I have it set so it'll like post to Facebook. So I would take a couple shots or videos with Instagram, and then just if I had a signal, I'd post it to Instagram and then let it do its thing automatically. And that was it. And I was just like kind of like sharing little breadcrumbs and pictures and things as I was going along my route, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't comment on really anything. I didn't look up emails. It was so nice. It was like, practice that with me, everyone. Go, because that's exactly what it feels like when you unplug for a minute.
Yeah. I tell you what, you know, this is a practice. You did it on your road trip. We're going to continue talking about the road trip on the other side of the break. But this is something people can learn every day. I talk about this. I actually wrote a book a few years back and talked about this, about grounding and going out and just disconnecting from the electronics, even if you can do it, you know, every so often, just to turn it all off and push away. You know, we both do the same thing. We do a radio thing. We're you know, we work on the internet. You know, my wife, she does the news and all of this. So we're technology based. Dude, I have an aversion to this stuff sometimes, and I actually fantasize of like doing shooting skeet with laptops. You know, like pull, or like throwing cell phones out into the middle of lakes because. And
I totally understand that feeling.
How about this? A catapult with a desktop, like a big desktop PC. Man, how far could you shoot that PC into a lake? I'm like, yeah, you know,
school trap, Jay.
Oh God, you know, we have to. It's important to unplug from this stuff sometimes, and like Popeye's saying, just get out there and get away from it, and just let your mind unwind. Yeah, we all can't afford the luxury of the road trip that he took, you know, just on an instant, but there's small ways that we can do this through the days. You know, this is fascinating. I want to hear more about your road trip because you said something about it the other day on your program that really resonated with me, and I hope we can get into that. But anyway, we're rolling up on the break here with our special guest, Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole and federaljack.com, and we'll be right back after this break. And we are back on our last segment this evening with our special guest, Popeye. And Popeye was telling us before the break about his road trip, and he's continuing on with that. Where all did you go? Of course, you started out in Florida there. How far was this road trip? Where all did you go, Popeye?
In total, I did 8,800 miles.
Wow.
My friend Christina did almost like 5,000 of it with me. I picked her up in the northern half of the country. First thing I did was... a lot of the listeners may know Aaron Dykes and Melissa Melton. Well, now they're Mr. and Mrs. Aaron and Melissa Dykes. They got married.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both very good friends of mine. They're both radio show hosts, researchers. They've been around for years. They used to both work at InfoWars. And Melissa's a very close friend of mine. She's like my sister. And I'm very close with Aaron. And Melissa asked me if I would give her away at the wedding. So I drove out to Texas first, out to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And hung out in Austin for like 4 or 5 days and did their wedding and hung out there. And then from there, I went up to Iowa and visited some family that was there. And then went from there out to Michigan. And then went from Michigan out to, where the hell did I go after Michigan? We went Arizona. And then Arizona to Colorado. Colorado. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. No, Colorado to, I think, Michigan, and then down to North Carolina, and then back to Florida. I think I missed something in there, though. No, I think that was it. Yeah. I went through like 21 states.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Very
amazing
cool.
to see. And I only saw half the country. I didn't go anything more west than the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot more. I mean, I've been out. I've driven all over the country when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been all over the place. But this road trip, I only went out there, but I still did 8,800 miles. The next one, we're going to go out to the West Coast, and we have to figure out how we're going to crowdsource this, but we'd like to rent an RV for like 3 weeks and go and do radiation readings all throughout the West Coast, because Christina is also known as Rad Chick. And that's one of the things she does, is she does research on Fukushima and radiation and stuff. And we were taking readings along the trip, and like out in New Mexico, there were some really high readings, and in Colorado too, even like 9 stories up, we were getting really high readings. So we want to go out and do a whole trip from like Southern Cali all the way up the West Coast. And I figure like go all the way up in, like closer to the coastline, and then go inland like maybe 50 miles or 100 miles, and then come back down and work our way down like on the farther eastern half, and see like if the radiation level readings are different, by going inland a little further or whatnot, and then we can work our way back towards the East Coast again. But yeah, that's our plan, is to go out and do at least like a week and a half of readings on the West Coast, and then head back this way.
Very cool. That's a good idea. When Fukushima was going down, when it first happened, it's continually happening. Hasn't stopped, contrary to what people may believe or not know. Fukushima is an ongoing situation. When it initially began, Popeye, we've covered it closely on Phoenix Rising Radio. I was over on another network, and we were all over this thing, and we were trying to monitor the best we could, from some of the online sources, the monitoring, and there were a lot of videos out there about what was going on. I think that's a very worthwhile thing to do. And how about that, where they went around and changed all the radiation standards all over the United States for the different levels. Instead of saying it's unsafe, they just moved what the safe level allegedly was. And sometimes, some instances, thousands of times over, just so they wouldn't have to say, oh, we're over the limit. They just changed the limit. Crazy. I know here in Pennsylvania, they were picking up radioactive iodine. Oh my God, I think it was like 100 times over the safe limit in rainwater. And it was a brief mention in the newspaper, but people just don't care. They don't understand. But anyway, I think it's a really worthwhile road trip you have coming up. That should be really good. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, we want to do like an RV. That way we can set up a computer and stuff, and we could live stream.
Best way to do it. That's cool. How cool would that be? To be like the radio host on the road. You can like do different locations and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what we want to do, is to be able to do like broadcast. Like sometimes, obviously you leave it on a rebroad or something if you couldn't do a live broadcast for whatever reason. But we'd like to be able to do live streaming, and perhaps like maybe like one live broadcast a week or something from the road, and give like on the road updates and put it out there, because nobody's doing that. I mean, other people have done it, like walking. There's a couple people. Kevin Blanchard's done it, and a couple other people have, like, in the past maybe have gone up and down. But like, really, nobody's gone in depth, and really nobody's paying attention. Like you said, the government, in many cases, our government raised the acceptable limits, and I know Canada just turned their radiation detectors off right after the event. So I mean, nice response.
Yeah, I know.
Nice
Berkeley,
response.
the University of Berkeley, they have some air monitoring devices out there, and early on in the incident, I know they were actually picking up particulates of plutonium, and they did small amounts, particulates of plutonium in Berkeley that were from Fukushima. And I mean, they made it public. It was out there. It was in their readings, but they stopped putting that information out also. And plutonium's hot, and the reason there was even plutonium in that was able, a particulate to get into that sample, was because of the type of fuel rods that were in Fukushima, which were the MOX rods, MOX, which are the most deadly, that actually have the plutonium in them and other things. And, in a catastrophic failure, it's just, they had a hydrogen explosion out there, actually, that happened, and blew the rods all out into the water. Some of the fuel rods were actually found a mile from the facility, but everything's A-okay. Oh, yeah. It's all good.
Don't worry about that. Stop, Phoenix, even though it's still leaking to this day.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
There's a danger of a hydrogen explosion right now. But anyway, we're getting off track here. That's a Rad Chicks thing. Continue on with the trip. So that's your next trip coming up. What are some of the notable things about your trip? What are the most pressing things that you take from that road trip?
Well, I know what you heard me say the other day. It's kind of this. Well, it's one of the same things that we talked about on Freaky Friday. I know exactly what you're talking about. You heard me mention freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people are going to go, what? We don't have freedom. Actually, yeah, we do. If you go out into the country, you'll actually see real, true freedom. Like I said on my show, when I was out in New Mexico and I was looking at these huge mesas out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't see SWAT teams. I didn't see government bureaucrats. I saw just openness. I saw freedom. I saw people. And yes, there were sheriffs and stuff in some of these little towns, but I saw, in many ways, people actually living very free and just being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that something that I already knew, but it was like the universe reinforcing it, that the police state is in our minds.
Yes. Yes. When you said that, I'd heard you say that, and I'm like, oh, yeah, he gets it. He's got it. And that resonates with me. I agree 100%. Go ahead. What do you mean? Tell our listeners when the police state is in our mind. What are you talking about?
Well, yes, there are people that wear scary uniforms and they throw flashbang grenades and stuff through your windows. But that's like a bully acting out because they're afraid. And that's like a last-ditch effort. And I'll get into that in a second. But when I say that I saw true freedom, I mean I was standing out in spots where there was nothing, okay? And I could hear nothing but the wind and birds and nature, even insects in some instances. Maybe a little bit of a car driving off in the distance. But very peaceful and serene. And I was able to think a lot, get away from that Wi-Fi, remember I was talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So you get this new perspective. You start to realize, which I already knew, but it kind of, like I said, it was the universe reinforcing it. The police state is enforced in our mind. If you understand that we create our own reality, I'm sure your listeners are on point enough. They know what I'm talking about. And this, if you look into quantum physics, it's the same thing, by the way, where when they did the double slit experiment, they realized that the particle would appear in the very spot that they measured for it, meaning
Mm-hmm.
they were creating the reality of that particle appearing there. Well, we create our own reality. So via television and media, their radio, music, pop culture, everything, movies, it's put into our heads that we live in a police state. Now,
Mm-hmm.
technically, I mean, with the way they're doing things, I guess, yes, you could say technically we do. But the reality of the situation is that you have the real power, ladies and gentlemen. And they have to convince you otherwise. So what they do is they pump all this crap through the television and through media into your head. Your brain is a biological computer. You are therefore then outputting this through your eyes and projecting this. And I'm not saying like laser beams, but you know what I mean. You're projecting this reality and you're creating this reality that's being programmed into you. And in this reality includes this cage that is around you. And this cage is what everybody's fighting right now, this police state. And you have to realize that you cannot fight this cage. This cage is part of the construct, like the Matrix, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You can't fight it because it's made that you're supposed to fight it like that. So the harder you fight, the harder the cage gets. So instead of considering it a cage, consider it a cocoon. Allow yourself to change and enlighten as an individual, and that cage won't be able to hold you anymore. Okay? And then the police state won't be able to control you anymore. And that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of you realizing your own true potential. And that's why they have to put on that SWAT gear, and that's why they ride around in MRAPs, and they have to ride around in tanks like bullies, because they have to intimidate you and keep you in fear. Because if you live in love and you start to change your perspective on things, they become irrelevant. But newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, they've already lost. Mm-hmm. That's why they're acting out. Now, Phoenix knows what I'm talking about. By these guys running around in all their gear, that's them just being bullies. They're freaking out because the powers that shouldn't be, their bosses, understand that they've already become irrelevant. You can't stop what's happening. They cannot stop the awakening. And every day they become more and more irrelevant. And one day it's going to come to a tipping point where they will no longer be needed, period. And that is when mankind, humanity, will take its next step, and we all grow up a little bit and we get out of kindergarten, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get into first or second grade, and we can catch up with the rest of the universe.
Exactly. There you go. That is all true. You know, one of the reasons that resonates with me so much is because I realize that. And, you know, we talk about the analogy of allegory of the cave by Plato. And in the allegory of the cave, Plato is telling people how humans are like held captive. He describes this story where these prisoners are held captive in a cave, and there's a fire behind them, and they can only look in one direction on the wall of the cave. And in between the fire and them are just 2 or 3 small people who are controlling them, but they wear these big wooden masks, and in the shadows that are projected on the wall, they look scary and frightening, and they make these noises, and the people are terrified because they think these huge creatures are behind them that could hurt them, you know, these scary beings, when all it is a projection. It's fake. And, you know, the modern Plato's cave is what I call the man cave wall, the flat screen TV, the TV, you know, the images they put forward. And, you know, people run with this fear stuff, and they really build it up, and this whole police state, and you see the videos on YouTube, police brutality, you know, all these abuses. Yeah, do they happen? Yes. But you know what? They'll play them over and over and over. I will guarantee you, Popeye, if I wanted to make people afraid of, say, like lawn maintenance people, I could start running the stats on all the crimes that lawn maintenance people do, and, like, you know, put them on YouTube, catch them. You know, nobody follows other professions around, like bakers, pizza makers, car salesmen, or roofers. But if you did, and you're constantly filming them, you'd catch people doing all kinds of things, because people being people, you know, not everybody's okay, and you have people who act out. You could literally say, you know, you could bring up and post things about roofers and what they have done, and probably portray them as like this evil group of people. And people would be like, "You're a roofer? Oh my God!" They would like run from them. You know, and this perception is pushed forward. Now, back to the freedom thing. Like Popeye was saying, this construct that people accept and they have built around themselves. You know, I had a guy years ago. He's like, "Phoenix," he goes, "You have to do this and you have to do this." He wanted me to be like this, you know, really active and say these really bold things on the radio and get people all whipped up. And I'm like, well, why do I really need to do that? He said, "You have to fight for your freedom." I'm like, no, I don't. And they were kind of upset with me because they're like, "You used to be an airborne ranger, you were this, you were in the military, you've got to stand up, you got to fight for freedom, you got to fight for your freedom." I'm like, "No, I don't." He's like, "What do you mean you don't?" I'm like, "I'm free." And he didn't get it. He goes, "You're not free." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm free." He goes, "No, you are not free." I'm like, "No, I guess you're not free. I'm free. I don't have to fight for it, man. I accept it. There is freedom. I accept my freedom." And I think when all of us, like Popeye's saying, people are starting to wake up and say, "Wait a minute. You know, that's not a big scary thing behind me. That's somebody faking it. It's a projection. They're blowing this all out of proportion through the media. They're using the media to do this as a mind control tool and scaring everyone." When people actually stand up and say, "Hey, wait a minute. You know, this isn't a real threat, and we're not really held captive, and we are free." And people claim that freedom. That's what they're afraid of. That's what they're preventing, or want to prevent people from experiencing. So I agree 100%, man.
The part of the illusion is fighting that system. I'm going to give you a quote. This is from, and I've read this on here before. This is from the original Matrix movie. The actual, at the end, when Neo calls the Matrix, and he says, "I can hear you now, I can feel you." The original was actually edited. And supposedly it was said because the word chrysalis would confuse people, because a chrysalis is a cocoon. Just so you know, the word chrysalis means cocoon. Okay, as you heard me say earlier. Now I'm going to read you this, and I want you to tell me if this sounds anything like what I was talking about. Okay. This is the original speech at the end when he makes a phone call. Now, they edited it and changed it. But listen to this. This is the original one. And listen to how profound this is. This is exactly what you and I are talking about. And for the listeners, check this out. I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I imagine you can also feel me. You won't have to search for me anymore. I'm done running, done hiding. Whether I'm done fighting, I suppose, is up to you. I believe deep down we both want this world to change. I believe that the Matrix can remain our cage, or it can become our chrysalis. That's what you helped me to understand. That to be truly free, you cannot change your cage. You have to change yourself. When I used to look out at this world, all I could see was its edges, its boundaries, its leaders, and laws. But now I see another world, a different world where all things are possible, a world of hope, of peace. I can't tell you how to get there, but I know if you can free your mind, you'll find the way. That's amazingly profound, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, that is so cool.
The deepest line, I think, in there, really, one of the deepest lines is right in the middle. It says that to be truly free, you cannot change your cage. You have to change yourself. Just like I said, if you allow the cage to be a cage and you fight it as a cage, it'll always be a cage. If you change yourself as an individual and you turn that cage into a cocoon, the cocoon can't hold the butterfly once it's changed. The butterfly can break free of it. Well, it's the same thing. You change as an individual, you enlighten yourself, you don't live in the fear frequency, you live in love. And I'm not talking about, just change your vibrational level and everything will be okay. No. I mean, it's more to it than that. But if you don't live in that fear frequency, you no longer are encaged in that cage. If you live in the love frequency, that cage becomes a cocoon, you enlighten yourself, and you grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I tell our listeners all the time, say no to fear. The human condition, we're awash in energies, emotions, and they're constantly putting this stuff toward us. But we have an active choice. Whenever you see something fearful or you think a fearful thought, anyone who doesn't have fear, there's something wrong. You will experience fear as part of our survival mechanism, but it's how you deal with that. Okay, you see something scary, you read something scary, it's reported on the news or whatever. You acknowledge it like, oh yeah, that's a fearful thing. But then just say no to it and say, no, I'm not going to be afraid of that. And just push it out. You have to deal with it. You have to acknowledge it like, hello, fear, and then say no to it. No fear, I'm not going to have you. And replace that with hope and strength and positive thoughts. And, that's how we persevere. That's, a lot of people, and that's love. That's because I call fear anti-faith. When you have faith, you believe in something very deeply, something good that's going to happen to you. Fear is like anti-faith. It's worry. You're believing something bad will happen to you. So it's anti-faith. Say no to fear and all these things. So important.
You can't live your life in that frequency, Phoenix. You can't. And, one thing I learned when my wife died was I lost fear. It was gone. I said this to Joe about a week later. Joe Joseph, one of the other hosts here, is a very close friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, dude, I don't fear anymore. And I started to pontificate on air about this, and I realized that fear is BS. I mean, I already knew this. I had done plenty of shows on this over the years, but I understood it on such a deeper, profound level. And they constantly, the powers that shouldn't be is what I call them, mm-hmm. They pump out this crap, this vibrational frequency constantly in the news. I mean, you turn on the news and you instantly get anxiety, and it's like fear. This whole weekend, Fox News was pretty much just laying the groundwork for the invasion of Syria.
I know.
Using Memorial Day as like the emotional slay. It's disgusting. And people are like, yeah, we should bomb Syria. We should go in there and get ISIS. You people make me sick. We fund ISIS. We give them weapons. Come on. We need to grow up. We need to get out of this fear. Stop being afraid of the oogity boogity man.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're controlled. We're afraid of our own shadows. First of all, if ISIS and their little Ninja Clan outfits, and by the way, they graduated from wearing Ninja Clan outfits to wearing stuff that looks American made, like their web gear. Nice American made web gear, but I guess I digress. Anyway, if they come over here in their little ninja outfits, do you really think that they would be able to invade this country, like an invasion? Well, they could attack us. Okay, so maybe they kill a couple hundred people. Do you know how many, with 350 million people in this country? I'm not saying that those lives aren't important, but let's be realistic about this.
Oh, yeah.
We need to like amp the fear down. Like, stop. You have a better chance of being killed by heart disease and diabetes in this country than you do in cancer, than you do a terror attack. You have a better chance. More people have been killed by police than died in Iraq combat. Since 9/11, we've lost more people to police here in the United States than we lost soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen in combat in Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
So who's the bigger terrorist?
Exactly.
More people. I mean, like, use your heads, ladies and gentlemen. We need to seriously step back, take a fresh look at things, and just reorient ourselves and get AJ squared away again, and realize that there's really not much to be that fearful about. Yes, there's bad stuff out there, but you can handle it. I mean, you can handle it. You're all adults. What else? What other option do you have? Run to the government and have them do it for you? Trust me.
Exactly.
Take it from Phoenix and I both used to work for the government. They're not there for that reason.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, man. So true. You know what, Popeye? It's we're running down the bottom here. Fascinating stuff. I am so thankful that you came on this evening. I know you're busy, and to do 2 shows in one day and this whole thing, I really appreciate your time. And just opening your heart up to all of our listeners, maybe some our listeners who've never heard your show. Tell everybody what time your show's on and how they can find your websites and everything else.
Roger that. You can listen to me. I'm on usually live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. And if you want to listen to any of my older stuff, you can listen to I have all my archives since I've been at TFR over at truthfrequencyradio.com. But if you want to listen to my shows going all the way back to when I first started doing radio and special podcasts and stuff I've done the easiest way, you can go to federaljack.com. But I have a very simple, easy website. It's made just to go to, and you can just download the stuff and save it for yourself for free. It's all high def. It's called PopeyeRadio.com. It's very easy to remember. PopeyeRadio.com, and you can listen to all my stuff there. Follow me on Facebook. Just look me up, Popeye space DTRH. And look me up on Twitter at DTRH_Popeye. And check me out. Listen to the show if you find it of some value. And thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Thanks for having me on, Phoenix. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Again, thank you for obliging me so much. And to interview the interviewer, I think it's important because there's so many good hosts and really cool programs on TFR. And I don't know, it's kind of... spread that knowledge out there. And again, thank you so much for everything you did, man. Great show. Fantastic.
It was an honor being on, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you again to all your listeners. And I just want to close with, as I always tell the listeners on my show, ladies and gentlemen, the solutions to our problems are an inside job. So when you stop listening to this broadcast in a minute, go out and be the superheroes that this world needs. I love you all. I'm out of here.
Fantastic. Hey, I will see you. Good night. Well, there you go. Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole. Great show. How about that? Good stuff. We will be back here tomorrow on Phoenix Rising Radio. We have Bob Gilpatrick and also some very special guests coming up very soon. Captain Keith Plassick from down in Peru. He will be joining us also and tell us about his new project with the Discovery Channel. And that should be very soon, maybe within the next couple of weeks. Anyway, that's it. We're out of here. Good night, everyone. Find someone you love. Tell them that you love them. Good night, and God bless. We'll be back tomorrow.